Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
First of all, congratulations on having a book about Congress that people actually want to read.
Yeah, we were told for many years that if we wrote a book about Congress, no one would read it. So we decided to test that proposition.
Right, why though? Why?
Congress is the most interesting place as a reporter. There's 535 basically class presidents who are vying for power and love to talk to people like us.
And we got to write a story once, many years ago, about members of Congress skinny dipping in the Sea of Galilee.
Right.
So that's when I really got sold on the whole proposition of covering Congress.
So you are the only person who heard of Congress people naked and were like, yeah, I want more of this. that makes you an interesting person in and of itself.
Yeah.
You are known for writing Politico's Playbook, which many people regard as the be-all and end-all of politics and what's happening in D.C. You have it coming out 2 times a day. It tells people everything they need to know in like the shortest form possible, you know, just like tidbits and like this is happening, Pelosi's doing this, Trump is doing that, that's going to happen with Mitch McConnell, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Was it different having a long form to work within?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that was exciting to us. We had the arc of 2 years and the shutdown, so election day to election day.
Right.
And then we didn't know the government was going to shut down in the longest one of history.
Yes.
But it was kind of exciting to pull the lens back, go up and zoom out a little bit about these characters that we've known intimately for so long.
Let's talk about the shutdown, because that is one of the most interesting parts of this book. We knew about the shutdown from the outside. What I liked about this book is you get into the inner workings of how the shutdown actually happened, and it involves key characters. You've got Trump, and then you've got Mitch McConnell, but then you've got the House Freedom Caucus, who a lot of people will just be like, oh, it's just a crazy group of right-wing fanatics, but they're really precise. That's how you describe them in the book.
Yeah, they are. They're very precise. So the bigger story is Donald Trump followed Paul Ryan for 2 years. Did basically a lot of what he said. And Donald Trump, his campaign was pretty clear. He wanted a wall on the border with Mexico. There was no 2 ways about that, and he was very obvious about that. Paul Ryan did not deliver that for him and said for 2 years, we'll do it later, we'll do it later, we'll do it later. And finally, at the end of the day, Donald Trump decided to side with the Freedom Caucus, which is a group of 20 Republicans who were the 20 most powerful people on planet Earth, really, because they controlled Congress.
In what, break that down for me, because you do it in the book, but explain that, because one part of the book you say nobody has power, it's individuals, but then you talk about these 20 who are the most powerful. What does that mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think what was interesting is Jim Jordan, who was one of the leaders of the Freedom Caucus, said, you know, we're Republicans, we don't believe in unions, but we are basically a union. By banding together, they were able to stop any piece of legislation on the House floor, whether whether the Republican leadership wanted it or not.
And they favor more drastic tactics to get what they want, shutting down the government. They believe in legislative calamities, legislative crises, that people get confused and do things they wouldn't otherwise do. So they thought Nancy Pelosi, for some reason, would not be able to sustain the position, no border wall. Of course, she was for 35 days, and Donald Trump lost. And we believe, and we make the case in the book, that Nancy Pelosi then became the most powerful person in Washington because she stared down the president and won.
She is another character in the book who I have a completely different understanding of. We know Nancy Pelosi as the archetype. You know what Fox News says about Nancy, you know what people tweet about Nancy, and we see her in her press conferences. But in this book, you discover a different respect for her that is on the Hill. You discover that even Donald Trump respects Nancy Pelosi, maybe even fears her a little bit. Why?
Yeah, I mean, I covered Nancy Pelosi's first speakership, then kind of going to the minority, and then her return to glory. And when we sat down with the president in the Oval Office, I was surprised by this. I mean, he really has a reverence and a respect for her, I think largely because she has had success where he has failed.
Right.
Her troops, the Democrats in the House, stick with her no matter what. And for him, he sees Republicans go left, they go right, they're mismanaged and unorganized.
Yes. Well, and Donald Trump told us an amazing thing, and it's the last quote in our book. He says, Democrats stink on policy, they're bad politicians, and they have the worst ideas in the world, but they stick together, and Republicans don't. And he looks at that, I believe, and we've seen this throughout the last 2 years, he looks at Republicans and doesn't understand why they don't stick with him. Then he sees Nancy Pelosi keep all of her troops in line over almost every issue and doesn't understand how it happens.
That explains why he hasn't given her a nickname. No, genuinely, she's the only person who doesn't have, everyone else has got Sleepy this and, lying that, and with her it's just like, hello, Nancy.
Yeah.
There is a reverence for her. when you go through the book, you start to understand that unfortunately, Congress is not just an institution that is trying to create laws, but you've described it as a building full of people who really revel in power.
Yes.
It's a lot of people who are there for too long because they love the idea of having power. In fact, the way you described it in the book felt for me like you were talking about like 530 schmeagles, essentially. They were just like, my precious, that's all they want.
Right.
Like, is that really what drives these people?
I think you have to realize it takes a certain amount of narcissism to run for office, to think that you, before anybody else, should represent the country in this position. And I think how they all go about it is trying to get more power. Power begets power. They want to run for leadership. They want to run for chairmanships.
Yeah, they want to get power to either achieve legislative ends, get their priorities through, or to have control over other people, I think is the big thing. And I think if you look at a Paul Ryan or a Kevin McCarthy, it takes a lot to get into a position of power. Mitch McConnell, he, despite whatever's going on, is able to keep his cool and look straight ahead, and he does that.
His neck. It's a thing.
Well, it's because he has built power and chits over time.
Yes.
And the process of how members of Congress do that is endlessly fascinating.
The book details a story that is being told right now, and we're living in it. From what you have in this book, what do you think we should be looking out for as we move into the primaries and then into the presidential election again?
Well, there's definitely impeachment, and Anna and I are like in the middle of thinking about this in a news sense, right? Because Nancy Pelosi seems at this moment to be trying to create action so she doesn't have to impeach him immediately. There's a lot of people who want to impeach the president now. Nancy Pelosi says, let's hold on, let's do investigations and see where they lead us. She's not one to ever jump the gun. We oftentimes say that she's like Mitch McConnell in a way. She is able to drown out the noise, see what she needs to do, and finds a way to get there without shaking, without getting shook, without getting nervous.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other thing that you can really see in this Democratic primary is our book details the messiness of the Republicans, right? From the Freedom Caucus to the more establishment Republicans. That's what's happening right now for Democrats, right? You have the establishment Democrats, and then you have the Bernie wing, and Democrats are really trying to figure out what is the future of the party.
It's an exciting journey that you've painted, and honestly, for me, it's like you've turned Congress into almost like a Game of Thrones book. So congratulations on that. Wonderful having you both on the show. Thank you so much for being here. The Hill to Die On is available now, and you can subscribe to Politico's Playbook. Go to politico.com. Jake Sherman, Anna Palmer.